Black waitress says, "Sir, that's my mother's signature," and the crystal glass slips from the billionaire CEO's hands, shattering against the Italian marble of the Empire Room, New York City's most expensive restaurant. The noise cuts through the elegant murmur of the main hall like a knife. All eyes turn to Table 12, where Charles Whitman, CEO of Whitman Energy Corporation, stands pale as a ghost, staring at the 24-year-old waitress who just uttered the words that would shake his $50 billion empire. Kayla Johnson never imagined her life would change while serving grilled salmon and Dom Perignon champagne. She had been working at the Empire Room for 3 years, swallowing racist comments disguised as jokes and condescending smiles from customers who barely saw her as a human being. But at that moment, holding the water jug with steady hands, she was no longer invisible. "Excuse me, what did you say?" Whitman stammers, his usual baritone voice reduced to a hoarse whisper. Beside him, 2 Silicon Valley investors watch in confusion as the powerful businessman crumbles before a black employee. Kayla points her trembling finger at the document Whitman was proudly displaying moments before. The original design for Whitman's solar panels, the technology that transformed a mediocre businessman into one of the richest men in America. In the lower right corner, an elegant and unmistakable signature, Dr. Amelia R. Johnson, 2003. "I said," Kayla repeats, her voice gaining strength, "that's my mother's signature, Dr. Amelia Johnson, the woman you said died in a lab accident 21 years ago." The flashback is inevitable. Kayla was only 3 years old when soldiers arrived at the door of the modest house where she lived with her mother, a brilliant chemical engineer specializing in renewable energy. "Explosion in the lab," they said. "Chemical accident. Unrecognizable body," they explained without allowing a funeral. "Just a small check delivered a week later and a paltry compensation from the company where Amelia worked as a junior researcher, Whitman Energy Corporation." The empire was born exactly 6 months after Amelia Johnson's death. "Security," Whitman shouts, partially regaining his composure, but his hands shake uncontrollably as he tries to put the document away. "This woman is delusional. Get her out of here now." The restaurant manager, Mr. Thompson, a 50-year-old white man accustomed to pleasing billionaire customers, approaches nervously. "Kayla, please go back to the kitchen. We'll talk later." But Kayla doesn't move. For years, she has studied every photo, every document, every memory of her mother that she has managed to preserve. She knew that cursive handwriting better than her own. And now, seeing Whitman try to hide the evidence, an old suspicion finally takes shape. 21 years, she murmurs, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Exactly 21 years since my mother died, and you became a solar energy genius. What an interesting coincidence, don't you think?" The Silicon Valley investors exchange uncomfortable glances. One of them whispers something to the other. Whitman realizes he is losing control of the situation, and his mask of corporate benevolence begins to crack, revealing something much darker underneath. "This person is clearly disturbed," he growls at Mr. Thompson. "I want her fired immediately. And if this hallucination makes it onto social media or into the press, I will sue this establishment for defamation." Kayla smiles for the first time in 3 years of silent humiliation. It's a smile Whitman can't quite decipher, but one he should fear. The smile of someone who has just found the thread that will unravel an entire tapestry of lies. As security approaches, she whispers just loud enough for Whitman to hear. "You didn't just kill my mother, did you? You killed everyone else who knew the truth about who really invented this technology." Whitman freezes. How the hell did she know about the others? There, amid the chaos of a luxury restaurant, before the curious eyes of the financial elite, Kayla carried a secret that could rewrite the history of the world's largest renewable energy company. If this story of revenge and justice is moving you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because what lies ahead will prove that underestimating a daughter in search of the truth is the biggest mistake a billionaire can make. The dismissal came before security even arrived. Mr. Thompson, sweating coldly at the threat of Whitman suing the restaurant, did not hesitate to choose his side. Kayla Johnson, you are fired for inappropriate conduct and disruption of the work environment. Hand in your apron and leave immediately. Whitman partially regained his composure, adjusting his Italian tie, as if he could reorganize his wounded dignity along with the fabric. This person clearly suffers from serious mental disorders. She probably saw my name in some magazine and created this pathetic fantasy to get attention. The Silicon Valley investors exchanged uncomfortable glances. Their reaction had been too questioning. Whitman's response had been disproportionate for a simple, delusional employee. "Mr. Whitman," one investor said carefully, "perhaps it would be best to reschedule our meeting. It seems there have been unexpected complications." "Absolutely not." Whitman slammed his fist on the table, making the cutlery clatter. "I will not allow a deranged waitress to sabotage billion-dollar deals with ridiculous hallucinations." But Kayla didn't move. Even as security approached, she remained standing, watching Whitman with a calmness that deeply unsettled him. It was as if she knew something he couldn't dissip. 21 years is a long time to keep secrets, Mr. Whitman," she said, her voice low but laden with a certainty that cut through the noise of the restaurant. "But not so long to forget a mother." Whitman felt a chill run down his spine. The way she said, "keep secrets," suggested she knew more, much more. Now, as the two uniformed men finally reached the table, Kayla smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes, cold and calculated. "You know what else is interesting, Mr. Whitman? My mother always said she kept copies of everything. Every experiment, every discovery, every private conversation she had with the bosses." Whitman's blood ran cold. Private conversations. How the hell did she— "This woman is delusional," he yelled at the security guards, but his voice came out higher pitched than he intended. "Get her out of here before she causes any more trouble." The security guards hesitated for a moment. Kayla wasn't being aggressive or violent. In fact, she seemed dangerously controlled for someone who had just lost her job in such a humiliating way. "Don't worry," Kayla said gently to the security guards, raising her hands in surrender. "I'll leave on my own. But Mr. Whitman," she turned one last time, "maybe you should call your lawyers. You're going to need them very soon." And then she did something no one expected. She took her cell phone out of her pocket and showed the screen to Whitman. It was a photo, an old faded photo, but unmistakable. It showed a young black woman in a laboratory wearing a white lab coat, smiling next to a younger man who was clearly Charles Whitman more than 2 decades ago. "My mother kept a lot of photos, Mr. Whitman, and a lot of other things too." Whitman felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. "That photo, I remember that day. Amelia had insisted on taking the photo to commemorate the partnership. I thought all the evidence had been destroyed in the accident." "Impossible," he muttered, instinctively reaching for the phone. "All the photos were— there are no more photos." "Were what, Mr. Whitman?" Kayla tilted her head, feigning innocence. "Destroyed in the same accident that killed my mother?" The Silicon Valley investors didn't need to understand the nuances of English to realize that they were witnessing something far beyond a disturbed employee confronting her boss. They began discreetly putting their documents away in their briefcases. Kayla continued, her voice gaining strength. "You know, I always found it strange how you managed to develop solar panel technology so quickly after her death. Almost as if you already had everything ready, just waiting for the right moment to present it as your creation." "You have no idea what you're talking about," Whitman growled, but he was quickly losing control of the situation. "Your mother was a junior researcher, an assistant. I developed all the technology. Assistant? Kayla laughed, but it was a joyless laugh. My mother had a PhD in chemical engineering from MIT and 2 postdoctorates in renewable energy. But of course to you, she was just an assistant, right? Whitman's mask was quickly slipping. The polished, articulate man was being replaced by something more primitive and desperate. It doesn't matter how many degrees she had. I had the contacts, the funding, the business acumen. Without me, her ideas would have died in a university lab. So you admit they were her ideas? Kayla asked. Whitman realized his mistake immediately. In the last 5 minutes, this waitress had gotten more information out of him than federal investigators could get in months. And she was recording everything. Kayla saw the recognition in his eyes and smiled again. That cold smile that haunted him. Thank you for the confession, Mr. Whitman. It will be very useful. Enough, Whitman exploded, standing up so abruptly that he knocked over his chair. I'm not going to stand here and listen to delusional accusations from a... What? Mr. Whitman, Kayla interrupted, her voice sharp as glass. Finish the sentence. The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone in the restaurant was now watching, waiting to see what word would come out of the mouth of the billionaire humanitarian, the philanthropist who publicly supported causes of racial equality. Whitman clenched his fists, his face red with impotent rage. He wanted to complete the sentence. He wanted to use the words he really thought. But there were too many witnesses, too many cell phone cameras now pointed in their direction. Security, he said through clenched teeth. If she doesn't leave voluntarily, remove her by force. But Kayla was already putting her cell phone away and walking toward the exit. It won't be necessary. I've already gotten what I came for. As she walked through the hall, she stopped next to a table where 2 investors sat. Gentlemen, she said politely in perfect Japanese for a moment to show her command of language. It might be best to investigate Mr. Whitman's background more thoroughly before finalizing any agreement. Some recent discoveries could significantly affect the company's reputation. The investors looked at each other, surprised not only by her fluency, but by the respectful formality with which she addressed them, a stark contrast to Whitman's thinly veiled arrogance. Whitman watched the exchange with growing horror. What are you saying? What the hell is going on here? But Kayla was already on her way out, pausing only to address the entire room. To everyone who is recording, and I know you are, post on social media with hashtag Justice for Amelia. It's time for the world to know the truth about Charles Whitman. And then she left, leaving behind a panicked billionaire, skeptical investors, and an entire restaurant full of powerful people who had just witnessed something that would change everything. Whitman sank into his chair, the reality of the situation finally penetrating his arrogance. This was not a delusional waitress. She was Dr. Amelia Johnson's daughter, and she had spent 21 years preparing for this moment. What he didn't know was that the real storm was just beginning. Kayla hadn't just kept photos and documents for 2 decades. She had built a network, gathered evidence, and planned every move with the precision of a master chess player. Whitman thought he had won 21 years ago, but in reality, he had only given Kayla enough time to prepare a revenge that would destroy not only his fortune, but the entire foundation of lies upon which he had built his empire. The phone rang. It was Jason Miller, the only investigative journalist who had responded to her emails in the last 2 days. Kayla, I just got a very interesting call from a lawyer representing Charles Whitman. Apparently, you're a mentally unstable former employee who is spreading dangerous slander about a respected business leader. And what did you say? Jason laughed on the other end of the line. I said I'd love to hear her side of the story, especially after seeing the video you sent me. The video. Kayla had discreetly recorded Whitman's reaction at the restaurant, especially the moment when he almost admitted that the ideas were her mother's. But that was just the appetizer. The main course had been stored away for 6 years. waiting for the right moment. "Mr. Miller," Kayla said calmly, "what I showed you in the email is just the tip of the iceberg. My mother was meticulous. She documented everything. Every experiment, every meeting, every private conversation she had with Whitman. You mean audio recordings, email correspondence, and, best of all, she was suspicious of him in the last few months before she died. She even made backup copies of everything and sent them to a third party." Jason was silent for a moment. As a veteran journalist, he knew when he was on to something big. "Kayla, you need to understand that Whitman has unlimited resources. He will try to destroy your credibility, your life, your family. Are you sure you want to go through with this?" Kayla's voice was steely. "He destroyed my life 21 years ago. I'm just returning the favor." Meanwhile, at the offices of Whitman Energy Corporation, the mood was one of all-out war. Whitman had hired a public relations firm specializing in crisis management and a team of lawyers whose sole function was to neutralize the threat Kayla posed. "I need you to understand," Whitman told the group gathered in his conference room. "This woman cannot be underestimated. She was smart enough to provoke me publicly, record my reaction, and now she's trying to blackmail my company." Linda Carter, the head of public relations, leafed through a detailed report. "Whitman, we've done a thorough investigation. Kayla Johnson, 24 years old, single, no children, lives with her grandmother, limited educational background. She has worked in low-skilled jobs her entire life. She is an easy target." "Easy?" Whitman laughed bitterly. "That easy target made me look like an idiot in front of investors. I want her completely destroyed. Reputation, credit, ability to work anywhere in this city." Pause. What none of them knew was that Kayla had not been alone for a long time. Dr. Patricia Reynolds, a former lab colleague of Dr. Amelia Johnson, and now a full professor of chemistry at the State University, had been the third person who had kept the backup copies for more than 2 decades. When Kayla knocked on Dr. Reynolds' office door that afternoon, the 65-year-old professor hugged her as if she were her own daughter. "I was wondering when you would come looking for me. Your mother said that if anything happened to her, you would eventually ask the right questions. Did you know she didn't die in an accident?" "Dear," Dr. Reynolds sighed heavily, "your mother called me the day before the accident. She said Whitman was pressuring her to sign documents that would transfer all rights to the research to him. She refused. The next day, she was dead." Kayla felt a chill. "Why didn't you ever report it?" "Because I didn't have enough evidence." Whitman covered his tracks very well. "But your mother was brilliant. She predicted he would try something like this. That's why she left me this." Dr. Reynolds opened an old safe and took out a small metal box. Inside were 3 flash drives, a sealed envelope, and something that made Kayla's heart stop. Her mother's graduation ring, which should have been cremated along with her body. "She told me, if anything happens to me, give this to my daughter when she's ready to fight. I think that time has come." As Kayla opened the files on the flash drives, she discovered that her mother had been much more paranoid and intelligent than she had imagined. There were recordings of phone conversations where Whitman clearly pressured Amelia to transfer the rights to the research. There were emails where he threatened to take drastic measures if she didn't cooperate. And there was something even Kayla didn't expect. A recording of their last conversation, made secretly in the lab. In the recording, Whitman's voice was cold as ice. "Amelia, you can do this the easy way or the hard way, but this technology is going to be mine with or without you." Her mother's response was courageous to the end. "Charles, you can steal my research, but you will never steal my conscience. Someone will find out the truth. Not if no one is alive to tell it." The file ended abruptly. Kayla looked at Dr. Reynolds, tears streaming down her face. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of a daughter who finally had the weapons to avenge her mother's death. Whitman made a fatal mistake, Kayla murmured, carefully putting away the flash drives. He thought a black waitress would never be smart enough to connect the dots. Dr. Reynolds smiled for the first time in years. Your mother always said you had the same determination she did. I think Whitman is about to find out that underestimating the women of the Johnson family is the last mistake anyone can make. That night, as she organized the evidence that would destroy Whitman's empire, Kayla received a threatening message on her cell phone. Stop now, or the consequences will be permanent. The number was blocked, but she knew exactly who it was from. Kayla typed a simple reply. My mother sends her regards. For a moment, when that recording revealed the final conversation between her mother and Whitman, all the years of pain and uncertainty finally made sense. But what would come next would prove that some revenge is worth waiting 2 decades to execute perfectly. What Whitman didn't know was that Kayla had spent the last 3 days orchestrating much more than a simple exposé. While he was mobilizing lawyers and public relations experts to destroy a waitress, she was coordinating what would become the most spectacular downfall of a CEO in American corporate history. Jason Miller wasn't just an investigative journalist. He was the investigative journalist who had taken down 2 corrupt senators and a mayor in the last 5 years. When Kayla showed him Dr. Reynolds' audio recordings, he knew immediately that he was looking at the story of the century. Kayla, Jason said on Thursday morning, I need you to understand what we're about to do. This isn't just going to destroy Whitman. It's going to rewrite the history of renewable energy over the last 20 years. The first bomb exploded at 6:00 a.m. Jason's article in the Washington Post wasn't just a news story. It was a complete dossier. The audio recordings were embedded in the website, allowing anyone to hear Whitman's voice threatening Amelia Johnson. The documentary evidence was digitized and verified by 3 independent laboratories. And at the center of it all was the photo of Whitman with Amelia in the lab, dated exactly 6 months before her death. At 6:30 a.m., Whitman's cell phone began ringing nonstop. By 7 a.m., Whitman Energy Corporation stock had plummeted 40%. By 8 a.m., investors had sent official statements canceling the billion-dollar deal. But Kayla wasn't done. The second phase of the operation began when she appeared in front of the Whitman Energy Corporation building at 9 a.m., no longer as a fired waitress, but as the daughter of the real inventor of the solar panels that made Whitman rich. She wasn't alone. Dr. Patricia Reynolds was by her side, holding a folder containing 20 years of documents. Dr. Robert Anderson, Amelia's former lab colleague and now professor emeritus at MIT, had flown in from Boston specifically to be there. And Jason Miller was broadcasting everything live on his social media channels. I come here today not to seek revenge, Kayla said to the cameras in the crowd that had gathered, but to restore the memory of the woman who truly created the technology that saved millions of lives through clean energy. My mother, Dr. Amelia Johnson, did not die in an accident. She was murdered because she refused to hand over her life's work to a man who wasn't a third as smart as he thought he was. From the 47th floor of the building, Whitman watched the crowd gather through the glass windows of his office. His lawyers were frantically talking on the phone, trying to control the damage, but it was like trying to stop a tsunami with an umbrella. Mr. Whitman, said his assistant, entering the office with a pale face. The FBI is downstairs. They have a search and seizure warrant. Whitman felt his blood run cold. Impossible, there isn't enough evidence to— Sir, his assistant interrupted, holding a tablet. They have the recordings, all of them, and apparently there are witnesses who are talking about other similar cases. Other cases. Whitman knew exactly what she was referring to. Amelia Johnson had not been his only victim over the years, just the most important one. Dr. Chun, who committed suicide after developing a revolutionary battery. Sarah Martinez, who died in a car accident a week before patenting a new type of wind turbine. Each tragedy had resulted in Whitman developing similar technologies months later. At 11 a.m., Whitman was escorted out of his own building in handcuffs. The images went around the world in a matter of minutes. The man who had built an empire on the corpses of true geniuses being treated like the criminal he always was. Kayla watched from the sidewalk, surrounded by reporters, as the man who had stolen her mother's life was placed in the back seat of a police car. Whitman looked at her through the window, and for the first time in 21 years, there was no arrogance in his eyes, only the fear of a man who finally understood that he had completely underestimated his opponent. "Miss Johnson," shouted a reporter, "how does it feel to see Whitman arrested?" Kayla took a deep breath, feeling the weight of 2 decades of pain finally being lifted. "I feel that my mother can finally rest in peace, and that no other brilliant inventor will have their life stolen by predators like Charles Whitman." The third phase began that afternoon. The intellectual property lawyers Kayla had secretly consulted with over the past few weeks filed 16 simultaneous lawsuits, claiming the rights to all the patents Whitman had stolen over the years. With the evidence presented, it was only a matter of time before the entire tech empire was dismantled, and credit was given to the true inventors or their families. By 6 p.m., Whitman Energy Corporation had lost 70% of its value. Investors were fleeing like rats from a sinking ship. And Charles Whitman, the man who thought he could intimidate a black waitress with threats and corporate power, was in a federal cell facing charges of murder, corporate fraud, and conspiracy. Kayla returned home that night, hugged her grandmother, Evelyn Johnson, and for the first time in 21 years, cried tears of relief instead of tears of pain. Grandma Evelyn smiled, stroking her granddaughter's hair. "Your mother would be so proud of you, girl. So proud." On television, the news continued to show images of what was already being called the Whitman scandal. But for Kayla, the real victory wasn't seeing her enemy destroyed. It was knowing that Amelia Johnson's memory would finally be honored the way it deserved. What no one knew yet was that this was only the first phase of something much bigger. Because when you spend 21 years planning justice, you don't stop at revenge. You build something that ensures injustice can never happen again. 6 months later, Kayla Johnson was no longer an unemployed waitress struggling to survive. Sitting at the conference table of the newly founded Johnson Innovation Institute, a research center dedicated to renewable energy built with the $2.3 billion recovered from the stolen patents, she watched a new generation of young scientists present their findings. "Today, we are announcing our 5th patent this year," she said into the microphone during the press conference. "Every penny of the profits will be invested in scholarships for students from disadvantaged communities. My mother always believed that knowledge should serve humanity, not rich predators." Whitman, meanwhile, was languishing in a federal prison, serving multiple life sentences. His former friends in the business elite had deleted his name from their contact lists. The mansion was auctioned off to pay compensation to the families of the other victims. His children changed their last name. At the last hearing, he had begged to speak to Kayla. I just wanted to ask for forgiveness," he stammered through the prison glass. Kayla looked at the man who once thought he could intimidate her. "Mr. Whitman, forgiveness is something you ask for when there is still time to repair the damage. You had 21 years. Jason Miller won the Pulitzer Prize for investigative journalism. Dr. Reynolds was appointed to head the new institute, and Grandma Evelyn was finally able to retire, proudly watching her granddaughter on television. Whitman tried to destroy Kayla, but ended up destroying himself. She learned that true revenge is not retaliating for the harm you've suffered. It's achieving success your enemies could never imagine. The best part? Every time Whitman turned on the prison television, he saw the name Johnson Innovation Institute in the news, reminding him daily of what happens when you underestimate the power of a daughter determined to honor her mother. If this story of justice touched your heart, subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that the truth always finds its way to the light, no matter how long it takes.